Hi, let me introduce myself. I'm Brittany, a petite blonde with blue eyes and a smile that could light up your whole room. I recently turned 23. My work colleague Sarah is the yin to my yang, tall, with fiery red hair and a bubbly personality that draws people to her like moths to a flame. We make quite the pair, and after a long night of celebrating Sarah's birthday at this amazing beach resorts, we found ourselves in an unexpected and terrifying situation. It was past midnight when Sarah and I bid farewell to our friends and decided to call it a night. But as we approached Sarah's apartment, laughter still echoing in the empty streets, we noticed something unsettling. The front door was slightly ajar. Sarah frowned, her brow furrowing in concern. "I could have sworn I locked it before we left," she murmured, her voice tinged with unease. I tried to reassure her, my own nerves beginning to fray at the edges. "Maybe you just forgot," I suggested, though the sinking feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. With a shaky breath, Sarah pushed open the door and stepped inside, her eyes scanning the dimly lit interior for any signs of intruders. But the apartment was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint rustle of curtains in the breeze. Relief washed over me like a wave as Sarah flicked on the lights, illuminating the cozy living room in a warm golden glow. But that relief was short-lived, replaced by a gut-wrenching sense of dread as we made our way further into the apartment. It was then that we noticed it. The subtle signs of a struggle. The cushions on the couch were overturned, the coffee table littered with scattered belongings. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave as I realized that we were not alone. Before I could utter a word, a noise from the hallway drew our attention. A soft creak of floorboards, followed by the sound of muffled voices. Sarah's eyes widened in terror as she turned to me, her hand reaching out to grasp mine in a vice-like grip. "We need to call the police," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. But before we could react, a figure emerged from the darkness of the hallway, tall and menacing, with eyes that gleamed like shards of glass in the dim light. My heart hammered in my chest as I stumbled backward, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The intruder advanced towards us with slow, deliberate steps, a cruel smile twisting his lips as he surveyed us with predatory eyes. My mind screamed at me to run, to flee from this nightmare come to life, but my legs refused to move, rooted to the spot by fear and uncertainty. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Sarah lunged for the phone on the nearby side table, her fingers fumbling with the buttons in her haste to call for help. But before she could dial a single digit, the intruder was upon us, his hands wrapping around her throat with a vice-like grip. I screamed, the sound echoing through the empty apartment as I watched in horror as Sarah struggled against her attacker, her face turning blue as she fought for air. With every passing moment, the room seemed to spin around me, the walls closing in as if to suffocate me along with my friend. But just as I thought all hope was lost, a sudden surge of strength coursed through me, banishing the paralysis that had gripped my limbs. With a primal scream, I launched myself at the intruder, my fists raining down on him with all the fury of a woman fighting for her life. For a moment, we grappled with each other in a desperate struggle for dominance, the sounds of our fight echoing through the apartment like a symphony of chaos and terror. But in the end, it was sheer determination that won out, as I delivered a final blow that sent the intruder crashing to the ground in a heap. gasping for breath. I scrambled to Sarah's side, my hands shaking as I checked for signs of life. Relief flooded through me as I felt the faint beat of her pulse beneath my fingertips, her eyes fluttering open as she struggled to regain consciousness. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I helped Sarah to her feet. With one last glance at the intruder lying motionless on the floor, we fled into the night, our hearts pounding with the weight of what we had just witnessed. As we stumbled into the safety of the street outside, adrenaline still coursing through our veins, we knew we needed to get help fast. Sarah clung to my arm, her breath coming in ragged gasps, while I frantically scanned the deserted street for any sign of life. "Where do we go?" Sarah's voice trembled with fear, her eyes wide with panic. I glanced around, my mind racing as I tried to come up with a plan. "There's a neighbor a few doors down who might be able to help," I said, my voice shaking as much as my hands. With that, we set off down the dimly lit street, our footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. Every shadow seemed to hold some unseen threat, every flicker of movement sending us into a panic. But we pressed on, driven by fear and desperation. Finally, we reached the neighbor's house and pounded on the door, praying for someone to answer. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing a middle-aged woman with a concerned expression on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing in confusion as she took in our disheveled appearance. Before I could respond, Sarah burst into tears, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush as she recounted our harrowing ordeal. The neighbor's eyes widened in horror as she listened, her hand flying to her mouth, in shock. "We need to call the police," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. With that, she ushered us inside, offering us a safe haven from the horrors of the night. As we waited for the authorities to arrive, we huddled together on the couch, drawing strength from each other's presence as we tried to make sense of what had just happened. Hours passed like an eternity as we waited for news, the minutes ticking by agonizingly slow. But finally, the sound of approaching sirens shattered the silence of the night, signaling the arrival of help at last. The police arrived in full force, their expressions grim as they listened to our story. They combed through the apartment for evidence, collecting statements from both Sarah and me as they worked to unravel the mystery of the home invasion. In the end, the intruders were apprehended, their motives still unclear. But one thing was certain: we had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death, thanks to our quick thinking and sheer determination. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting its golden light upon the quiet street, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The nightmare was finally over, and we were safe once more. But as I glanced over at Sarah, her eyes filled with gratitude and exhaustion, I knew that the memory of that night would haunt us both for years to come. And yet, in the face of adversity, we had emerged stronger than ever, united by our shared struggle and our unbreakable bond of friendship. As we embraced, tears of relief streaming down our faces, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A force to be reckoned with, unyielding in our determination to overcome whatever darkness threatened to consume us.